When we think about ancient Egypt, what usually comes to mind? Probably a huge, unified kingdom, right? Ruled by one all-powerful pharaoh. Well, get this. For over a century, that picture was completely wrong. We're about to dive into one of the most fascinating and, frankly, chaotic periods in all of Egyptian history, the 23rd Dynasty. Just let that sink in for a second. What if ancient Egypt had more than one pharaoh? Not one king, but several, all claiming the title, all ruling simultaneously. How would that even work? It sounds like a recipe for total chaos, but for a big chapter in Egyptian history, it was just reality. And that brings us right to the 23rd Dynasty. During this period, the idea of having multiple kings wasn't some kind of crazy hypothetical crisis, it was the political standard. This whole era, which is part of what historians call the Third Intermediate Period, basically redefined what it meant to rule Egypt. So, let's get into it. We're looking at a kingdom with many kings. And just to be clear, this wasn't some simple civil war. It was a period of what we call decentralized rule, and an even cooler concept, parallel kingships. To really understand how this all worked, we've got to look at how Egypt became a nation divided. And not just politically, but literally, geographically. The key idea here is decentralized rule. So in simple terms, instead of all the power flowing from one capital city and one pharaoh, it was spread out all over the place. Local leaders and regional bosses held the real authority. The main fracture line was right between Lower Egypt, up in the north, around the Nile Delta, and Upper Egypt, down in the south. And these weren't just administrative zones anymore. Oh no, they became full-on competing spheres of influence. Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. Let's break down these power centers. In Lower Egypt, you had cities like Tanis and Leontopolis becoming these new political hubs. But down in Upper Egypt, you had the ancient, incredibly powerful city of Thebes, the traditional religious heart of the whole kingdom, holding its own significant authority. So, if the kingdom was divided, who were the new power players actually pulling the strings? Well, it wasn't just Egyptians fighting for control anymore. The political landscape had gotten way more diverse. You had two main groups vying for control. On one side, you had chiefs from the Meshwish, a Libyan tribe that had moved into Egyptian society and really risen through the ranks. And on the other side, you had the immensely wealthy and influential high priests of the god Amun, who basically ruled Thebes and the south like it was their own personal territory. The timeline of this rivalry is where that idea of parallel kingships really comes to life. I mean, you can literally see how the reigns of these pharaohs overlapped. So for example, you've got Pedubis I ruling, but at the exact same time, another pharaoh named Sheshonq IV is on the scene. Then later, Osorkon III creates a strong base for himself in Thebes and starts his own line of successors, all while other kings were likely holding power in other parts of the country. It's just this tangled, fascinating web of rulers existing all at once. Now, a divided kingdom can't exactly pool its resources to build massive pyramids, can it? So what did all this political fragmentation mean for Egyptian art and culture? Well, the answer is a major shift from the monumental to the miniature. I mean, think about it. The Great Pyramids or the temples at Karnak, those required a unified state with massive resources. The 23rd Dynasty just didn't have that. With no single treasury to fund these huge projects, the artistic focus turned inward, towards smaller, more personal forms of expression. And this shift produced some absolutely stunning work. Instead of colossal stone statues, you start to see this incredible craftsmanship on a smaller scale, like these intricate and really elegant bronze statues. The skill was still there, it was just being applied in a different way. Art also became way more personal. Items like these faience amulets, these beautiful little pieces of glazed ceramic, became super common. They were objects for personal devotion and protection, and they reflect a culture where individual belief and artistry were just flourishing, even while the state itself was fractured. But, and this is crucial, not everything changed. The core traditions held on. Tomb paintings, for instance, show that the classic Egyptian artistic style absolutely continued. The skills, the themes, the beliefs, they were all passed down, which preserved a sense of cultural continuity through all the political upheaval. This quote just captures the whole era perfectly, doesn't it? A fragmented landscape where multiple leaders claimed sovereignty.
It wasn't one Egypt anymore, it was many, all existing at once. It was messy, it was complicated, and it was a complete departure from that old ideal.
And that leaves us with a bigger question to think about. The story of the 23rd Dynasty really shows us that a nation's art can be a mirror to its politics. When power is centralized, art is monumental. When it fragments, art gets personal. It really makes you wonder, how does the art of our own time reflect the political world we're all living in right now?